Down. I mean,
okay, should we get started? Okay. Okay, good morning. Welcome to the Tuesday, October 3rd, 2017 meeting of the Northampton County General Purpose Authority. Mr. Hartney, you want to call the roll?
Sure. Mr. Langen?
Present.
Mr. Donahue? Absent. Mr. Dowd? Absent. Mr. Chavone?
Here.
Ms. Ferraro? Absent. Ms. Whitaker?
Here.
And Mr. Copland?
Here.
Also present is Solicitor Lucius, Mark Hartney, Dave Hughes, and Sarah Ortiz from Northampton County Department of Community and Economic Development.
Okay, in your packets, we were provided the minutes from the last week's, from the actual June meeting.
Sean, I'll make the motion to accept them.
Motion by Mr. Copland,
Second.
second Mr. Chavone. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Treasurer report, Dave.
because we hadn't met for so long, I decided to just send everything out under one spreadsheet.
Okay.
So that you could break them down by months. So if you have any questions, I think, Neil, you have a question relative to the P3, which I'd have to go back and research. But
Okay, yeah, none of the months match of the statements on the P3 project expenses versus the revenues that are coming in. There's a variance each of the months, and I'm just wondering,
I think
understanding what that is.
It's possible that what it is between when it comes in and when it goes out, because there's a delay between when I actually get the funds, put them in, and before the check is written and when it goes out. And I'll have to go back to see exactly how it all matches up. But relative to the P3, the bills come in, they come through Sean and John Brown, and then they cut the check to me, and then I turn around and I send it out to whoever the vendor is, which a lot of times it's Norris McLaughlin. We've had lately, it's been Krieger. We've done $1.5 million, and we just did $1,250,000 that comes through.
And Dave, don't they go through the Department of Public Works too, through Karen?
Oh, yes.
So there
Actually,
really
that's
is,
where I get the check from.
That's right. So there really is sometimes a lag from when you first get the bill until the check.
And I know some people have gotten calls about the delays sometimes, and I think, Sean, you've experienced that too.
Yeah, I created one for about 10 days myself by not signing something. So.
Are we reconciling on a monthly basis to show that the revenues coming in equal the expenses?
We do, and I'll go back, and I'll actually, next report, I'll show you the breakdown in just P3 and the prison, because those are the two major expenditures.
Yeah, see, I believe last month the project, the prison equaled the revenues and expenses, but it looks like the last 3 months P3 project has not.
No, I'll actually break them down.
Some of that was vacation. People, I think Karen at one point was out of the country on vacation.
Yeah.
So it really did skew
It's sometimes a
the
balancing
time.
act, but
Correct.
Yeah, most of the times those are getting approved mid or late in the month and paid the second month. Just like do the list of when it came in to when it was
Yeah.
dispersed. But all the amounts
Right.
are exact. I mean, whatever we're getting, whatever we're bringing in is going out the door on the approval.
And I can tell, and from our standpoint, in our firm's internal billing system, everything's been matching up. It's just a question of timing.
Right.
Very good.
I'll make a motion.
Motion to approve Treasurer's report, Mr. Chavone.
Second.
Second, Ms. Whitaker. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carries. Invoices for payment.
Invoices, they were included in the packet. There's actually three for Norris McLaughlin and one for DCED, which is for 2 months for the administrative service agreement. And I believe the bills were included in the packet for Norris McLaughlin.
Where in the income statement do these expenses, the P3 expenses?
These aren't P3.
These are not.
Most of it you're going to find is probably the shell building project.
Okay.
And I think you'll see a lot of no charges for the
Yeah, there are.
shell building.
And I think there were some bills for the grant.
Right.
For the kids.
Just, Neil, as a supplement to what you said, the P3 charges, whether it's for the bridge project, the prison, or any other P3, are being billed totally separately from anything that I would consider to be ordinary business matters of the GPA. So that's another check and balance that we have.
And what I can do is pull out so you can actually see what the spec building, actually all the expenses relative to that.
And I think, Dave and Mark, there's some arrangement with Petrucci if the transaction goes forward for reimbursement of fees.
Right, the fees that we can pass on, like the
loan document.
Right, for the
Right.
loan documents,
Right.
but any of the partnership agreement or referral agreement.
Right, that's all.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
Second, Mr. Chabon, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries.
And the last thing is, as I do every month, a running total of all the invoices, so you have that.
Okay. 4.0, public comment. Good continues. New business, get that in there. New business, 5.1, soft communications presentation regarding GPA website. Brian, you want to walk us through that?
Morning, everyone.
Hey, morning. How you doing?
Okay, so we've been working on the site. We've got probably about 90% of the content laid in, and most of the pages completed with a lot of help from some folks at GPA. There's one thing that I want to point out on the homepage, and it's good that we're doing this sort of as a test before it goes live, because as you can see up on the screens, we've got just two green rectangles, and on mine it's a little different. We've got it to sort of match the N for the logo, and it's just a matter of cross-browser testing, figuring out what it is that's causing it to do that on this machine. So we'll take a look at that.
No problem.
Good morning,
Peg.
Sarah, is there an easy way to scroll down on this? I'm not sure. Sit down there. So on the home page, we open with the tagline. There's supposed to be a bridge behind there. Can't really see it right now.
Collapsed, didn't it?
Still being built.
Controlled explosion.
We've got room for featured stories to let people know, exactly what you do and some of the recent successes that you've had.
Excuse me. I noticed this before, because I received some emails from Kim. Why are they in Latin or other languages?
Right now, it's just placeholder text
Okay.
that we'll use.
The one I received was all in Latin, and even if you're an altar boy, you don't know what the hell it's saying.
Yeah, I was raised Catholic too, and I'm not sure
Yeah, I
what
don't
any of
either.
it was.
John was asked to review it, and our bills are going to be exorbitant because he had to sit there to translate.
Yeah,
it.
the
It's a long
expenses
process.
are
It's a long
English,
process.
Latin dictionary, and
Okay, so right on the homepage you get also a small blurb about the GPA. You can learn more from here, and you can see all the upcoming meetings. So we'll just click on the Learn More About Us now. Takes you there. Small blurb about the GPA. This is a section to introduce the authority members. Right now, we have some more of that Greek, or Latin rather, and we'll need to add some of some of the other authority members.
I think everybody we requested to get the bios together.
Oh, yeah, geez. Yeah, I forgot about that. Could I use Peg's bio?
That's fine, or like middle school baseball stats, like you've added 283. And just throwing some random stuff.
Played third base in Little League.
Third base.
Oh, and while we're on that, maybe we should make just point this out. We have a LinkedIn button there so that everyone could potentially follow you personally on your LinkedIn profile, which may be beneficial if you're connecting with other business associates.
Question, when we had talked about creating like NCGPA emails for all the board members.
Mm-hmm.
Are we still talking about doing that?
We haven't discussed it any further.
Okay. And
I
I guess one of the things for you guys to think about, we do not, or it would not be my recommendation that we put like your personal email
That
addresses
should not be on this website.
on this website. And what we could do is put like a Neil at Northampton County GPA email, and that could actually go to Sarah or myself, and when we get it, we can send it to you guys if that works. Because I'm also cognizant of trying to add another email address for you guys to remember to go check.
A couple of comments. Personal email should not go on here for privacy reasons. And you may talk about privacy. We just got the terms and conditions, and I'm having them reviewed. Also, if we put new email addresses on this website that are GPA related, we need to be cognizant of the fact that that may invite people to comment to some, but not all, of the board members of the GPA. And we don't want to run the risk, in my view, of having somebody communicating with, let's say, 3 or 4 board members, and we accidentally hit reply to all and somehow it violated the Sunshine Law. So I think if there are emails, new emails created, I think we just need to be cognizant of that, very careful as to how that email is being used, who you may be responding to, what you may be receiving.
So maybe just a general info at GPA email that comes to the staff, and then we can...
I throw it out for consideration because I'm sure if you're like many other people, you're only getting about 150 emails a day, many of which are spam or junk mail. So this becomes another email address that you periodically have to clean out. And if you're like me, you may start deleting, and then you accidentally delete something that has substance, and you say, oh, I never got that. So I just throw it out as something to be cognizant of, both legally and from an administrative perspective. I'm not trying to nix it, but I just want to make sure we understand what the consequences are of doing that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the amount of weekly emails I get on the P3 stuff from all the engineers.
Oh, my gosh.
That's why I started that NCGPA, just because I know it's all in one bucket. I don't have to go, oh, wait, did I miss an email on,
And then
So,
my
right,
concern
Sean.
is, let's say somebody sends something to that email that's personal. Just, oh, I used the wrong email address. Is that a public record? Because it went to an email that is in your role as a board member. And somebody says, hey, Peg, last night first date was great, Can we go to the carnival again this week? I'm exaggerating, obviously, but...
Stalk your email? Really?
Yes.
I mean, if...
Stalk your email? I didn't know you...
But I just throw it out as it's yet another avenue of communication that can be both a plus and a minus.
I would personally more be in favor of general mail for the GPA versus individual on all the host of reasons that John has mentioned. And preserve privacy, and if you don't have it, you know what we're not here thinking about will not create a problem unbeknownst to us.
Yeah, right. Bottom line, it could become a forum for public comment that could become somewhat difficult then to manage and control.
So I think what I'm hearing on the website, we want just one general email that would come to staff, and then we'll disseminate that appropriately.
Exactly.
Right.
And if you're not sure, we can always talk about it at the next board meeting.
Yeah,
Okay.
website's a kind of a living thing. We can always make alterations in the future, and I think that's sort of what we had talked about as a option B. It just going directly to, I think it was maybe Sarah's inbox for now, or something like that. So that's the way it's set up currently. Okay. We did upload the 2 audit reports that we have for the previous years. Click on one of these. You're able to view it and download it. We have a section for news, and these are news articles that have been published about the projects that the GPA is currently working on or has worked on in the past. We have sections for P3 projects. Financing, developers, and construction. Also current projects under P3, and I think these currently are the same ones that live on the home page when you get there. So if we were to click on one of these, you would see more about that particular project. Meetings, pretty straightforward, upcoming meetings. All the meeting minutes we've got there. Same deal. You click on one of these and you have the option of viewing it or downloading it. Resources, we left some space here for being able to feature partners that the GPA works with. If we wanted to do that, I know we talked about that a little bit briefly on the last call. But these are all just placeholder for now. Some guidelines or resources. And I think we still have 2 others that you guys had sent over that we haven't uploaded yet. But this section has, I think, 5 or 6 different PDF documents that people can download right from the website.
Good.
Contact page is pretty straightforward. And right now, the Facebook button goes to the page that was set up for the Facebook page, and LinkedIn, I think, is still being set up. It does work on a phone, an iPad, and those have been tested. Any questions?
No, I mean, just for the benefit of the board members, I mean, again, this was set up to look down the road as we engage possibly in more P3 initiatives, a resource to have some information available. Are we going to pull together more of the info on the, for existing projects that we've done for, maybe reference some of the Lafayette, the Lehigh, for Avian, do we have the section for under,
You had a section for was it financing?
Yeah.
okay, because like under projects, past projects, I mean, just to touch on,
I
You know.
agree.
yeah. And the other thing too, like even like our annual funding of the KIZ, a good one that we didn't think
Okay.
about before.
We can-
I remember that today.
We can certainly add that.
Yeah. So I don't know, I'm just looking down.
Right,
you
and
know.
if you need any assistance writing, because some of those I reviewed on the P3, the blurbs.
Mhm.
And if you need me to review anything else, let me know.
Okay. I think the only thing right now, like you mentioned, was the disclaimer text.
You sent the privacy policy, I think, was it Kim or
Yeah.
you? And I'm having an intellectual property, I do intellectual property, but I'm having somebody who does copyright law all the time look at that to make sure I think it'll be fine, but just to make sure it's absolutely fine.
Okay. Sure. Yeah, and we do have the text in there that you
Right.
reviewed for those other sections.
And this is pretty much functionally ready once we plug in the last couple of
Yeah.
pieces, then we're,
Yep, so we'll upload some of those guidelines. We'll want to upload the bios. We did test internally, and the contact form is working, so it is sending out and all of that. And we do have a spam filter on it already, so it'll help limit some of that stuff. And like I said, it does work on phone and tablet, so good to go.
super. Any other questions? Thank you, Brian, appreciate it.
Just
Coming
did
in.
great.
Thanks.
Great
Thanks,
work.
Brian.
Uh, 5.2, Goodman Building discussion.
Yeah, you can come on. While Amy gets set up, just a brief introduction for the board. The city of Bethlehem approached the department to see if there were any ways that we could help with the Goodman Building, which is in South Bethlehem. I don't know. It's been in the newspaper quite a long time. They've had a challenging property owner that the city's been trying to work with for probably the better part of 20 years. They are currently in a process known as conservatorship that Amy will explain a little bit more about. But they have an opportunity to help facilitate the sale of this property to a private developer that will bring this property back into productive use. The challenge is that transaction isn't going to happen for a little while, and with the winter coming, they need to make some repairs to the property that without it, the property may not make it through the winter. But one of the additional challenges with this is you could make some temporary repairs that would probably be in the neighborhood of, say, $200,000, but you would have to rip them out once the property is fully redeveloped. So they're looking at more of permanent repairs so that that money isn't kind of lost in this project. So with that, I will turn it over to Amy.
Great. Well, thank you, Mark, for that introduction and the overview of it. My name is Amy Burkhardt. I'm the Deputy Director for Community and Economic Development in the City of Bethlehem. And I brought with me today two other experts in the field regarding the Goodman Building, that being Craig Hines, our Chief Code Enforcement Official in the City of Bethlehem, and Matt Deschler, who's one of the city solicitors, and he's specifically assigned to actions that are associated with the Goodman Building. As Mark mentioned, this building is located at 3032 East 3rd Street. The building is 32 East 3rd Street, and there's a vacant lot associated with it, directly adjacent to it, which is 30 East 3rd Street, located in Southside Bethlehem, directly in the historic district of the South Side, as well as in the central business district. So it's a building that has meaning to the community. It's a building that, is in need of preservation and has an overlying story within the city of Bethlehem that everyone knows and remembers as well. The condition of the building is significantly in disrepair. As Mark had mentioned, we've been working with this owner and really trying to bring this property into compliance with code and have been unsuccessful at this time, and so have recently been awarded as conservator of the building. So I did want to go through and give you a little history on the building. so that you kind of know how we got to this point today, because to say that we have an antagonistic property owner kind of speaks to the truth there. In 1986, Alvin Konofsky purchased the building. He operated as a flea market for 5 years, and when the flea market closed in 1991, it became a vacant building and has been vacant since that time. We have worked with the city, and he's allowed it to go into disrepair. He has not made any renovations to the building in the time that he's owned it. In the last 5 years, 63 citations have been issued toward this building by Craig Hines. Of those citations, what we find with this particular owner is that there's a real penchant to appeal any process that we have in trying to bring the building into compliance. So of those citations, 27 have gone back into an appeal process, and whether that be the Code Board of Appeals or through the magistrate's office or even taking it up to the county court level, we have been spending a great deal of time trying to, again, enforce the citations that we have and bring the building back into a condition. Because we've had such difficulty with this building, it did behoove us to start looking at, more substantial actions that we could take. So in April of 2016, this building was certified as blighted, and what that means in the city of Bethlehem is working with the Blighted Property Review Committee. We take it through the process of going through the Planning Commission as well as Blighted Property Review and have it officially certified as blighted, where it has to meet certain criteria to meet that condition. Once it's certified as blighted in the city of Bethlehem, it is subject to eminent domain action, and so that's why we took it through the Blighted Property Review Committees to really bring it to the point that we would be able to gain control of the building and bring it back into a usable condition again. At that time, what we found is we really started working in a dual pattern. We were working with the redevelopment authority hand in hand to take it through the Blighted Property Review Committee, but also started investigating conservatorship as one of the options to bring the property back into compliance. What we found is they're very similar in their use. Conservatorship's a little newer. It came about in 2009, but they each provided one avenue. So by pushing this property through both courses, anytime that we came across a hurdle in one of the actions, we were able to take it up in the other action. So what we found is when it came time to really move the property forward, conservatorship became the better option to take. And there were a couple of reasons for that, and I'll get into that a little bit later. So we blighted the property. We started the conservatorship action. In June of 2016, we discovered a portion of the roof had collapsed. And so, again, we went into the building and did emergency repairs of $137,000 to stabilize the roof of the building to prevent further collapse. In October of 2016, we petitioned for and were awarded conservator of the building. And in February, we released RFPs to look for developers to bring the building back.
Amy, is the conservator the city or BEDCO?
The city is the conservator of this building. In April of 2017, we received 4 proposals from developers, and I think you saw the one that we chose as the preferred developer. We chose C3, which is a collaboration of Dewey Engineering, of Allo 5, and Skepton Construction. So they're all wonderful firms, and they came together and gave us a great presentation of what they wanted to do with the building and how they would bring it back. I wanted to give a little overview of conservatorship because I think it's a little less known than an eminent domain action.
Real quick, how many other companies
We
presented?
received 4 altogether.
4 proposals?
Yes.
Okay.
And they were all really good. We were just very much,
So it was a good level of interest.
it was a good level of interest. And I think that was really important to the city. We really wanted to make sure that because we're looking to maintain this building, we're looking to save it and preserve it, we want to make sure that the private community has an interest in doing it. We want to make sure that they can actually make financial sense of redeveloping this building as well. And so it was great to see the 4 companies come forward with their proposals. Conservatorship is a fairly recent law enacted in 2008 through the state of Pennsylvania. What it does, it allows a couple different entities, neighbors of buildings, nonprofit organizations, municipalities, to not take ownership of a building, but basically gain control of a building so that you can rehabilitate it and bring it back into a usable condition. It has been used not often in this area, but it has been used fairly extensively in Philadelphia, as well as there's quite a few cases in Schuylkill County that have been used. And I think Allentown used it in a couple instances. This is the first conservatorship case that the city of Bethlehem is looking at specifically. So, and although it's new to Pennsylvania since 2008, it's not new in other states, and so this act was really based off of some other states' laws that they have in place. It might be called receivership in other areas. It's notably used in Louisiana, Maryland, and Massachusetts, and so Pennsylvania had enacted this in 2008 to be another tool in the toolbox that we can use to deal with blight within our communities. And so this has been a very successful tool as well. To become conservator of a building, there's a couple things that you have to do, and it's, again, very similar to what you would have to do to go through blighted property review, and you have to demonstrate significantly that the building is in disrepair and the owner is unable or unwilling to repair it. And so these are the 4 criteria that you absolutely must have in a property: that it cannot be legally occupied for at least the year prior. You cannot be marketing the property, so you can't have it for sale, looking for a buyer for it. The property must not be subject to a foreclosure action, and the property has been owned by at least 6 months by the current owner. In addition to those 4 absolute criteria, you also have to have at least 3 of the following 9 criteria. So, you know, and I'm not going to read them off, but I guess the point of this was, like, there is a significant process to demonstrate that the owner is unable to maintain their building.
The conservatorship can't be looking for an owner? Or
The
is it-
conservator can be looking for an owner. It's the current owner. So, like, if Alvin Kanofsky had listed his building
Yeah,
for
if you
sale,
can prove that he was trying to market it in some way, that
we would not have been able to apply for conservatorship, correct. So basically, you have to demonstrate that the owner is just, you know, not going to do anything to maintain their building or bring it back into compliance.
Okay.
So that kind of takes us back to where we are with the Conservatorship Act. We decided that that was the best route to go. So we appealed, we didn't appeal, I apologize. So we were appointed conservator in October of 2016. We released the RFPs in 2017, and in April we selected C3 as the preferred developer of the property. One of the great things that we found about conservatorship, and one of the notable things, is the city never winds up being the owner of the property. Rather, we shepherd it through the court process to be able to revitalize it and get it into the hands of a private developer. So, like, we never take the property, and I think that's what was also very appealing to us as a community, is that what we've seen, especially with eminent domain, is a very unsustainable process by which we would take a building and really release it back for less than what we took it for. And so we can't, as a community, we can't afford to do that as a process. So we need to look at other tools, and conservatorship was one of those tools where we're not actually expending the cash to take ownership of the building, but rather transferring it through the process of the court process to get it into the hands of C3.
Does the owner of the building get any money back on this?
He would. Like, in theory, if there were no liens on the building, and we would appraise it, and then he would be, and similar to what you would do with eminent domain, you'd give the market value of the building. However, there's a significant number of liens on this building, so he won't see any money at the end of the day because there's a priority position for all those municipal liens as well as IRS liens.
He has IRS liens.
He does. Another one of the hurdles with this building. And another reason why conservatorship was a really good option, because it does really clearly define the lien schedule and how funds get distributed, and then we are able to transfer the property free and clear of liens at the end of the day into the hands of a private developer, which is an important aspect of it.
So guys, why hasn't the IRS or the other municipalities, why haven't they foreclosed or whatever, taken it into their inventory? Like, why isn't it going to
Why isn't there a tax sale? That's
or
what
a
you're
tax
saying.
sale, or why are they still outstanding after all these years?
That's a really good question. I wouldn't be able to speak to why they haven't done that.
He allows the tax liens
For the-
he allows a few years of
He waits till the last minute, right?
With the IRS things, the IRS just doesn't act. That's all I can say about that.
At least not in a timely manner, right? Yeah.
They want you to pay your taxes on time. So yeah, no, but I think the IRS things have been on the building, what do you think, 10 years maybe now?
Oh.
Yeah.
Did you mentioned emergency repairs of $137,000. by
Yes.
making those repairs, does the city have a lien on?
We do.
That's, okay.
We also have a few liens. Yes, so we did place a lien of $137,000 after, there was approximately $250,000 of liens prior to that one, and so it brings it up significantly, right? So as you saw in your packets, part of the final plan by C3 is to redevelop the building, putting commercial on the first floor, residential apartments on the upper levels of the building. They have some option for building out onto the vacant lot as one of the possibilities on phase 2 as they're revitalizing the building. They have a great plan for activating the Mechanic Street side of the building as well and adding some windows. And this is the part that actually faces the greenway, so this is currently the back of the building. And so we really love that aspect of it as well. They have a great plan for getting it all done, a 16-month timetable in which the renovations could be complete upon transfer of the property. And the total project cost winds up being $2.56 million. So where we stand now is, as I mentioned previously in the first slide, is that we have a property owner that has a real penchant for appealing processes, court actions. And so we were awarded conservatorship. We had the final plan that was presented by C3, approved by the court. We petitioned to sell the building, and that was also approved by the court. And all of those actions have been appealed by Mr. Konofsky. And so they're currently appealed to the Pennsylvania Commonwealth Court. We anticipate after that appeal is denied that he will again appeal to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. So what we're looking at right now is an appeal process in total that would last approximately 18 months. It's a little difficult for the developer that we chose to put in $2.5 million on the very unlikely chance that the conservatorship would be overturned, but we don't feel like that's a fair request to make of them as well. However, that being said, the building is in disrepair. The roof does still leak. There's significant water infiltration into this building. It's impacting the building next to it. And so we're looking to make enough repairs to prevent further deterioration of the building, is what it comes, is the crux of it. So in the repair that we're looking at,
The stabilization you did for the $137,000, what did that entail? That didn't make the roof tight? That didn't stop
it did
water
not make the
infiltration?
roof tight. So, and Craig can speak to that a little bit, but when the roof collapsed, can you explain?
The roof is huge wood trusses. They're spaced probably 25 feet apart, and the tails of two had rotted. Unbeknown to us, we couldn't get in the building. It took me a year and a half to get access to the building. And when we finally got in, we realized the roof has collapsed. And one of the citations was ordering him to repair the roof. Obviously, he did nothing, and in the meantime, we solicited bids, got a contractor in. We did a temporary truss, some temporary supports, and did that section of the roof, which is a small portion of the entire roof. There's currently about 6 other places the roof is leaking. And a lot of mold in the building, it's been leaking for years, there's a lot of material. All the pictures that you've seen are all the interior of this building on every one of these slides.
Is this building of any historic significance?
Apparently.
Or, huh? Maybe it's a dumb question, but it almost seems like a bit of money, it should be raised, and
Well, it is in the historic district. I think it was originally a Sears and Roebuck building, and then transferred to the Goodman Furniture Store, of course. We feel like it does have historic significance to the community as a whole and really encourage the preservation of it, which is exactly why we were looking for private developers to give us the clear indication that they were able to rehabilitate it in a fashion that was amenable to the private community.
And correct me if I'm wrong, through the project that has been submitted to you and through the cost to do the repairs, there is economic viability to save the building and also making an income-producing building.
Correct.
Whereas just total erasing and starting again based upon its current value is probably a very good idea. In that sense, would probably improve the value of the property actually if it based on just the land. But I believe what the developer has done for the city of Bethlehem is present a economically viable project to retain the building.
Correct, which is exactly, again, that speaks perfectly to the point of why we're looking for private developers to do this as opposed to like a city renovation project. You know, like we want to make sure that it makes economic sense.
Has there been, to that point, has there been a final, has the city gone through a final engineering study where any monies that are going to be expended prior to the developer getting in there are going to be well spent in the sense that it's structurally sound to be saved?
The plan that we have for the stabilization work that we're looking at doing is actually put together by C3, because they are the end user at the end of the day. We are under a court order to actually transfer the property to them, and so we can't sell it to anyone else, so we want to make sure the structural repairs are to their liking and to their standards. So it will be stabilized, and it's part of their plan, and the first portion of their plan is what we're looking for in the $600,000 is to start that stabilization work. So it would be inclusive of the environmental remediation, the structural repairs to the roof, the trusses, the replacement of the roof decking, the replacement of the roof membrane. That would stop the water infiltration, which is what's largely causing the increasing deterioration of the building, is the water coming through the building. That's what's impacting it the most at this point. So that will prevent additional disrepair from happening.
Has C3 gone through the building?
They have.
They have.
They have investigated the building thoroughly. They have.
And again, I'm just trying to, as a builder, developer, asset manager myself, that's why I keep coming back to, well, you did emergency stabilization, but you didn't, but you didn't basically weatherproof the building
we
stop.
didn't.
So it's almost like, hey, we're going to spend, and again, I'm just looking at it like,
No.
when I spent $137,000 to not stabilize some sort of temporary roof structure to keep water infiltration out. And again, and I realize, C3 as a development entity, they're looking down the road, what is best for us? If we could get all this other work done in advance of our plan that would further our project, that's great. But what's the immediate need? That's the kind of stuff. We helped the State Theater in a similar circumstance where they came in and said, hey, our roof's leaking. We're having issues. We're having problems. We need to get this done because it's affecting other things. And, we helped them with that. But again, I'm just trying to get a handle on what's the cost of stabilizing the roof and getting it weather tight. Did anyone do a cost on that aspect of the work? And not the rest of C3's future project kind of stuff.
Right.
Because if they're looking again, with development goes risk.
That was, I
this
believe,
seems like a very risk averse
So and
item for C3.
to Sean's point, page 35 of 59 provides a cost breakdown of this, and
that's what makes the building watertight.
so
yes.
that's going to make it totally watertight through what would be line items 3 and 4, and to the point. And my understanding is that this estimate then fits into C3's cost to build, in the $2.6 million or $2.8 million of the project. So this is actually fitting into their work, and it's going to be a watertight building at this point, as well as doing some environmental remediation. But I'm getting the sense that is that environmental remediation going to be done in its entirety, or is that just a portion of what the budget will be?
This would be the entire environmental remediation of each of those floors. The large part of the remediation that needs to be dealt with is mold issues within the building, so there would not be additional environmental remediation above and beyond these costs.
So you're not going to have lead to contend with at some point?
I think
the
that
age of the building?
I think in the dealing of the mold issue, the lead issue would be abated. I think when
It
they're
has to be.
yeah.
It would have to be.
So, but yes, that is correct, that these are the costs that are associated with the complete stabilization of the building. And going back to the point of like the $137,000 that the city's already expended, largely that's the problem. Like we were tasked with basically preventing the building from falling down. You know, like when the portion of the roof collapsed, it pushed some of the structural portions of the building to a point where we were in fear of collapse of the building. And so the stabilization that we did just prevented that from happening. We did not have, and you know, continue to struggle that we don't have enough funding to bring this building back to the condition that we would want to bring it back to. Like we don't have we didn't have and continue to not have the full amount of money to replace the roof and make it do those structural repairs that need to be done. The money that's being expended as part of the summary of costs, those do go into the overall renovation plan. So the $2.6 million that we're looking at would actually be reduced by, you know, $569,000 as a part of that. And so they would pick this up and then just roll that into it. What we'd be looking at doing is making a loan so that they would be able to do the repairs to the building. They would repay the loan upon transfer of the building at the end of the day. Upon the termination of the appeal process, they would pull a loan on their own to do the full renovation inclusive of repayment of this loan and pay back the monies that were forwarded to them. So that kind of brings us to where we're looking, what we're looking for, and the requests that we're here for today. We're looking to use the Bethlehem Economic Development Corporation as the vehicle to provide the request to the GPA. So the GPA would be lending to the Bethlehem Economic Development Corporation. The Economic Development Corporation would in turn be working with the developer of C3 to put together the process and the loan materials that would allow them to do the stabilization work. We're requesting of the GPA $300,000. We're also putting in money toward that process of $300,000. We're hoping for a 0% loan for until the termination of the appeal process, which we anticipate will last 18 months. I have it listed here as an 18 to 24-month loan, just because of putting it on a longer time frame than what we actually needed. Repayment of the loan will be made upon transfer of the building at the termination of all the appeals. C3 will take out a loan, do the renovations, as well as repay the money back to the city as well as the GPA.
Is Mr. Konofsky that much of a contrarian that he just likes to fight? What does he hope to accomplish by the appeal?
Pushing off the process. I mean, there's 63 citations.
Is this just he's being a gigantic pain?
You're assuming that you're dealing with an entirely rational mind.
Sorry.
Well, I mean, I think that's an important point.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
there's something not right there.
I mean,
you
what
know,
does he hope to accomplish?
I don't know that he has.
You know, he's
end
spending
goal.
a lot of money on legal fees.
He represents
No,
himself.
he represents himself.
He represents himself.
Oh,
So we're
is he
spending-
pro se?
Yes. So like we're spending a great deal of time in trying to bring him into compliance, but he's really, you know, seemingly, and I can't speak to like what his end goal is, but it just seems like we're getting roadblocks at every turn. There are 63 citations, not a single permit has been pulled. No renovations have been done to this building in the last 20 years. The roof collapsed, and he fought us about getting into it to
If
repair
you
it.
wrote a check to him for X amount of dollars, he still won't go away.
Did C3 make any approach whatsoever to him as a property owner?
Okay, I apologize for trying to be logical,
C-
reasonable.
What was C3's
But
offer to him?
if we could
They,
just.
what, as
What was
part,
the last developer's offer to him?
I,
It was $500,000 about a year ago, is my information.
Okay, and C3 made no,
He
C3
walked
did
away
not-
with some money in his pocket.
And everything, all the liens and everything gone.
yeah, so what he's seeing in his, what he's seeing in his mind, and honestly, as a
Your
Developer,
perspective's
property
critical
owner.
here, right.
what he's seeing in his mind, I had a $500,000 offer a year ago. Like,
Yeah.
my property is worth some value, I will still do the bare minimum to keep it in my own possession, and I will fight the government tooth and nail. And is that what he's kind of doing? He's-
Well, Sean, you
so-
know what this tells
I mean,
me?
that's the tough thing, it's like,
You know what this tells me?
yeah.
Maybe the owner of the Glendon Hotel should talk to him.
What's that?
Maybe the owner of the Glendon Hotel should talk to him.
we have
We
had
faced that before today.
we have had both properties appraised as well. The combined value of 32 is $117,000.
I'll take it.
You would buy
For
it.
117?
You buy it, right?
Yep, I'll do it today, cash.
We've had for 32 specifically, because it was going through the Blighted Property Review Committee that had 3 appraisals on it. It has 2 independent appraisals and a review appraisal, and then the lot was appraised as well. The combined value means that the lot is like a contributing factor to the
Right,
building as a
right.
whole.
Mhm.
It's interesting because the independent value of the lot is 117,000.
Amy, excuse me, just to get back to what the request is, if I may, just interest in my time, I have to leave. Your request is for $300,000.
Correct.
Is the loan that's going to be made from Betco to C3?
Yes.
And is the money coming from Betco to fund the rest of it? The remainders are coming from the city of Bethlehem?
Well, we're looking at how to combine that.
Okay.
Most of it will likely be coming from Bedco, and the city may put a portion of it in. But Bedco would be the vehicle through which all of that happens.
So you would be looking for the GPA to be the lender directly to Bedco,
Correct.
and then you would then document a single loan, I would presume, from Betco to C3.
Correct.
Okay. And you would be securing that loan, even though we can all chuckle. You would put a junior mortgage behind everything else.
Correct.
So hypothetically, if something goes wrong with the conservatorship, I can't even say the word right. If something goes wrong, which is unlikely to happen, and the existing owner gets an offer that is just knocks the sock off, because that one block we can now do fracking at, hypothetically. And he gets a ridiculous offer, then all the previous liens, including any municipality that has liens again, and as well as our, through the Bedco loan, would be at least hypothetically covered.
Correct.
Okay. So the request is, before today and going over this, is to provide the direct type of financing with to Bedco on a project that the city wants to save through its historical means, and but there's always the chance that something happens with this money, or something happens with the building and the building can't save, then the city's going to move forward and do what it has to do to put a structure there. And I would presume it would be safe to say that structure that's put there, even if the building is raised, there would be enough economic vitality to repay this loan. Is that a fair statement?
So you're saying, like, if...
Let's say for some reason you get in there, and they've looked at the building, they look at the foundation, and because of all the water filtration, a sinkhole has developed, which renders the building has to come down. Do you believe that after raising the building, there'd be enough economic viableness to do a project there, and for Bedco's $600,000 loan to be repaid?
That's an interesting question. I guess we haven't really looked at it from that aspect of it at that point. Like, certainly, like, that's a viable area. The property value itself as vacant land is, better than what it is with the building on it. I wouldn't be able to venture a guess as to what the economic value of a new structure on that space would be. However, that being said, C3 has already investigated the building significantly. They've done core testing of the structure. They've looked at it. They are confident that it can be saved.
Understood. I guess my point in my question is just to study what could go wrong.
Yes.
That could negatively impact the repayment of the loan that's being requested of us. And, given the condition of the building, and I would presume, except for the historic review, there would be the ability to do some different things in that property and go up a little further, maybe in stories, to create some increased economies of scale for that particular property.
Yeah, in theory, and that it's very theoretical, like we
Right.
said, because
Understood.
it's being presented as a preservation of this building, and that's exactly what we want to see. I would not be the expert. I believe there's people on this board that would be more able to sort of expound upon like what the value of such a structure would be in the downtown area. I wouldn't even want to venture a guess. I believe that this is a valuable section of town. Certainly Southside Bethlehem has seen a lot of economic opportunity over the last several years, and it's an area in which people are looking at developing.
Is
So
it
like
in the
that would be
CRIZ?
a potential
Is it
project.
in the CRIZ?
It is not in
No,
the
not in
CRIZ.
the
This
CRIZ.
building is not CRIZ.
There's the opportunity in the future, though, John, based upon the CRIZ legislations, to swap in and out properties, whether that's within the game plan or not.
That would be up to
The city.
the CRIZ
Yeah,
authority.
the CRIZ authority.
But the city of Bethlehem isn't backstopping our loan in any way.
No.
No, actually, that's, if I may ask, the loan, if the GPA board agrees to this, there's a loan to Bedco. That loan would be unsecured. Right, if the GPA board agreed to the
Yeah.
300, that loan would not be secured in any way,
The
would it?
secured,
Matt?
the loan to Bedco would not be.
There would not be a
secured.
junior, a sixth position lien on the building?
No,
that would-
however, we're combining that as a collective one loan to C3, and so we'd be putting it, Bedco would be putting out $600,000 and securing it with this building.
Just to be clear then, if, as unlikely as everyone thinks, Kanofsky wins his appeal, what happens to the $600,000? Is it just sunk money?
Unfortunately, the
Is it-
city
is
does
it- it's at
anticipate that
risk.
if
It's
the
at
unlike-
risk
yes.
money is what I'm saying.
Yes, it's at risk.
If he wins, you don't get paid back.
Correct.
Which means the GPA does not get paid back.
Goes from being a loan to a grant.
It would depend on which part of this he prevails upon. For example, if, as long as the city prevails on the initial order from January this year, appointing us as the conservator, approving the conservatorship, all those liens should be valid, because even if the plan, even if the conservatorship plan and the sale of the property were somehow invalidated, the city would still be the conservator of the property. So the work that would be done as part of the conservatorship, and any liens in conjunction to that would remain on the property. Alvin would have to be, you have to be in a position then to, petition to terminate the conservatorship.
Let me ask it another way. The $600,000 that if you received it, if you used it to make various repairs to the building, and Kanofsky prevailed, do you have a lien on the building for those $600,000 of repairs that he would have to satisfy, or does that lien somehow get expunged if he prevails?
I mean, I mean, again, like I said before, I do think it matters. There are basically three orders that we're dealing with here. One, approving the city as a conservator. The second order, approving the city's final plan for the conservatorship. And a third order, authorizing the sale of the property to Collaboration 3. And certainly, even if we're concerned about the invalidation of those second two orders, if the city is a conservator, any liens put on the property pursuant to the conservatorship should remain as long as the initial conservatorship appointment is upheld. I mean, in addition, I think.
Yeah,
the city-
Mr. Desher, can you come up to the mic only
Oh, yeah,
because,
sorry.
yeah, Ms. Farrar makes a good point. We want to make sure we're getting this on record.
Agreed.
And I think, just as a separate matter, I mean, and I don't have experience in this, but I mean, if the city is, I don't know what we do, but I mean, if we're just doing emergency repairs on any type of property because there's an imminent collapse, I don't know I haven't been around, I guess, long enough, I don't know what the practice is, but we lien, I mean, we can lien those properties separate and apart from any conservatorship process.
Yeah, and if I can interrupt, where John was going on this, and here again, just because I've dealt with some of this stuff before, if the city were to put an emergency repair plan in place because that building's affecting another building, that would be for a specific amount of money to stop those water infiltrations and/or that stuff. But what you're looking to do by way of C3's ultimate plan is to do that work, plus a lot of other work. Okay, so when John's saying, would you have the ability under a lien to get that money? Well, Konopsky can go back and say, well, they didn't just fix the roof, they did advance work for some future land development / improvement plan. And that's my, again, first I want to go with, I want to support the project, and I think it's a great project. We just need to figure out how we do this where all of the risk isn't placed on us when there's zero risk for a developer.
I was going to say, did
Yeah.
C3 really have any risk here?
They have zero risk. In fact, they put fees into the proposal for the first phase.
They put
where I'm
those
look-
in from our request, though.
Yeah.
We wanted to have an understanding of it as we were looking at potential funding
Yeah.
sources, and so some of those, can fund professional fees as opposed to construction fees. That's why those are listed specifically. However, to your point, like the repairs that we're looking at in the 569,000 are the repairs that make it structurally tight and prevent further deterioration of the building. The reason that we're looking at environmental remediation is only because you really can't access it without removing the significant amount of mold in it.
But
Like
you
they-
put a stair, there's a price in for an external stair.
That's if they can't, if we look at paring this back, and if they cannot do remediation of the entire building, they would do remediation of just the third floor, which means they would, instead of accessing the first and second floors to get to that, they would have to put in an external stair to get to it. So we're kind of looking at various portions of this.
But that's all rolled, these aren't options, this is all rolled into one number.
It is all rolled into one number.
Okay, so then this really isn't, this 569 isn't potentially the ask then?
There are, I guess the preference would be to be able to do this portion of the project in its entirety. There is the possibility that we could pare back portions of this, but the preference is certainly to do remediation of the entire building as opposed to just the third floor.
Is what you're planning to do, and I'm going to go a little different direction, I apologize, I have ADD with my question. Is this going to be the loan that Betco will, or the financing vehicle that Betco's doing, is that going to be a loan to C3?
Yes.
Okay. So that's going to create an obligation. And to a degree, to your comment, John, about unsecured, I mean, effectively, yes. But I would think through our loan, we are, or have an interest, and I would think in a pari passu nature, relative to the lien on the existing property, or can that be secured in that specific fashion?
And I might need to talk with Matt about that. You had to bring up pari passu, didn't you?
Pardon me?
You had to bring up pari passu.
Yeah.
I think without addressing Neil's question, or answering Neil's question specifically, what the real focus here is for the board is you're being asked to make a loan, no interest, and maybe unsecured for $300,000. And you're saying, is there some way to secure that, even if the security is kind of like giving an Eskimo, a muscle shirt in the middle of winter, right? That's where you're going, right? And I mean, that's something lawyer to lawyer, Matt and I can discuss. But I think for purposes of this discussion, the mindset probably needs to be it's a 300. The ask is 300,000, no interest, a high probability that the city will prevail on conservatorship, but still some risk, albeit small, that the $300,000 is essentially becomes a grant as opposed to a loan, because it probably won't be paid back. And it really comes down to, legally, Matt and I can do so much, but it really comes down to, I think, a business risk analysis by the board. Do you agree, Neil, with your banker hat on, Mark with your business manager hat on, and Sean, 107?
I don't have any.
If I had that building and you offered me 117,000, I'd say let's go to the Blue tonight for dinner. I'm buying.
Mm-hmm.
You're in it's a tough.
And so I think one of the things that we're looking for today, we know there is a lot more from the legal side to work out with agreements and stuff, but because of timing, because this work needs to be done before winter sets in, we don't want to necessarily lose another month for this board to make a decision. What my hope or intent is that this board can make some sort of tentative approval with the loan committee ultimately signing off on the final documents and the final structure. And if that's getting into well, we're willing to pay for the third floor remediation because that needs to be done in order for them to make the structural roof repairs, but we don't want to pay for the first and second floor, even though that creates an economy of scale to do the overall remediation more efficiently. You know, like, we can decide that. I think what I'm hoping for today is some sort of tentative approval that, yes, we believe this is a project that the GPA should invest its resources in. We believe that there is a high probability that the city will prevail in its appeal and will be paid back in 2 years. That's where I'm going.
One other question is, the other 300,000 is coming from the city, correct?
It's a combination of the city and Bedco. So
Does is that $300,000 commitment conditioned on the GPA making a $300,000 loan?
no.
Okay.
And again, I'm a knucklehead with math sometimes, but when I look at this on the surface, the city, Bedco has approximately $300,000. If you took $300,000, you could do the roof removal, you could do the roof structure repairs for $214, and you could put a new roof on it for $85,000. So for a tiny bit over $300,000, you literally have a non-remediated, weather-tight structure to then wait out this conservatorship program. I mean, it looks like we're being asked to make a $300,000 gamble for zero interest for something that might. And I'd almost rather look at it, get a hard, tight budget on how do we get this roof structure repaired. If these were actual bid numbers, which they appear to be because you have multiple contractors.
They are, so they went through and got multiple bids from
Yeah, so if you're staring at like less than $310,000, I mean, I'd almost, rather do a third of that as a grant and have the developer put $100,000 of skin in against $30,000 per entity, and then Bedco could sit on $200,000 extra and not spring. Again, I'm just looking at it like, how do you get a state building to wait out this process? Because if the process doesn't go through, we're being asked as a non-participatory entity making zero money on this thing for, I told you when we had the phone call, I'm a very risk-averse person. In this world, in a development world, I'm not, because, with the risk goes the reward.
I understand.
But, when I'm staring at potential developers putting zero risk involved, and Bedco's putting $300,000 at risk, we would be putting $300,000 at risk, and you already have enough to tighten up the roof. That's what I'm. The only benefit our money is going to is somebody's advancement of their plan after the fact. Maybe I'm missing.
And they are
something.
repaying, you know what I mean? They are taking on the risk when we are able to transfer the building to them free and clear. I guess, we have an ability to.
That's not a risk, though. I mean,
when we're able to transfer the building.
They're willing to take the building after you. But again, that's a zero risk. We're willing to take it after you do all the work.
The tendency, again, we all acknowledge that this is extraordinarily remote, that this is going to happen, and it's typical that you kind of go to the nuclear, what could go wrong?
Absolutely.
Which is risk mitigation. I don't think it's anybody's goal for risk elimination, because I don't think we're all in the business to do that. That's one of the reasons we have the general purpose authority, is to be gap at the end of the day.
And any lending process has an amount of risk.
And what the expectation, again, that this doesn't go through. Your Bedco's going to have a loan to C3 for this. And it doesn't go through, are you going to be looking for C3 to repay the loan?
If we're unable to transfer the building to them.
It will not be repaid. Right?
Correct.
So to the extent that then, to Sean's point, that there is skin in the game, what is the willingness of C3 to do some kind of investment on their side so their risk is is not eliminated, it's mitigated. And we recognize, as you do, Sean, from the work that you do, that certain things don't pan out and you invest money. And, that happens all in the side in the developer's world. In that sense, is there a willingness on their part to put up some money?
It's certainly a conversation that we can have with them. I don't know that we've gone down that road significantly enough that I'd be able to speak to it with any degree of accuracy. So, certainly something that we could make the request of them.
Now, there's another option that I believe the General Purpose Authority has. The request has been for 0 interest, but we can determine to get a rate of return, since this is a loan request. The interest can be capitalized versus putting in monthly. So at the end of the term, there becomes a return, and then it truly feels like a loan. Again, my personal position of this, I have known, been a Bethlehem boy my whole life, and very much knowing that building feels like I was a teenager and it really wasn't being productively used. But time flies once you get to your 30s. So now I looked at your 1991. I was doing my age calculation, and I said, "Boy, where did the last 20-some years go?" But so the point is, I think what the purpose of our authority here is to be a gap situation, and I personally would like to understand what the willingness of the borrower, or excuse me, the developer is to on some of the area around professional fees, so to speak. In any typical banking financing, this is not banking financing, but the same review is typically made is, okay, what is the investment made? And even in the for-profit world, developers are looking to try to not come up with any cash that they have to put in, especially like transactions like this. So if there's some kind of balancing act with all those things, I think, it can be potentially put together.
Sure.
To get consensus. It would be possible to maybe get together with them with maybe a loan committee. But I mean, again, I look at it this 2 different ways. Maybe we tackle it as get a hard, fast number on getting the building tight so the roof's not going to fall down. Don't do any of the other remediation. And we could possibly look at, doing a third of that cost as a grant if the developer was going to participate and Bedco was going to participate. That would be like $100,000 each, plus or minus $104,000 each. Or possibly we could do on our end, I was even thinking, because we've done grant loan combinations before.
Right.
Maybe we do I'm just looking at the state theater, we gave them a grant for a portion of it. If we do maybe a $50,000 grant, a $100,000 loan, and then the developer would make up that $150,000. That'd be $50,000 each from each of those entities, which is 2% of the project cost. So for them to have 2% of their project, and again, that's for them getting the bells and whistles remediation, which is furthering their. So I don't know. I think either of those is even a good proposition. So one, it's either let's get the building tight and wait out the process, and then the developer takes over and does their thing, or we could do a grant loan policy. And again, I'm just throwing that out there.
I'd go back to, I think there's a lot more work to finalize the details.
I mean, they have, Mark, and not to cut you off, they have multiple bids from 3 different contractors, so the number plus or minus is to get the building tight and not falling down is.
Well, I think to Sean's point, and the fact, I think the most important thing, correct me if I'm wrong, is stopping the water.
That is our
So
goal.
if we can, given the time pressure with that, I would think is the number one time. Am I correct about that?
You are correct about that. Our goal is to simply prevent further deterioration, especially with the onset of winter of this year. We don't want to see further deterioration of the building.
It's the roof structure too, it's not just.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Just to stop the water.
No, it's to improve the roof structure. Well,
Yeah.
The trusses are bad, I mean.
That's
it's a
in
combination.
that's in the 300,000. That gets you the roof replacement. That gets you the removal before the replacement, and it also gets the roof structure repairs. So I'm assuming in that 214,000. What's the square footage of that building, that roof?
About 6,000.
6,000 square feet. Yeah, you're that says repairs, you could easily reframe that entire, you
Well,
could,
that's what the bid is for, is that
Yeah.
all the truss tails are starting to rot.
Yeah.
And there needs to be.
So that's
some
for
of
a
the parapet
complete-
walls are starting to collapse. There's more than just the roof. We could go in
there's a,
for 200,000 and correct it for several years, but then you're still gonna have to go in and tear the roof off and redo the structure again. That's the idea of this. I mean, there could be a way to stop the water, but you're throwing that money away because you're gonna have to tear it
yeah,
off.
no, that's why I'm saying, I'm okay with the blow off the roof, completely rebuild it, because that's a $300,000 number, plus or minus.
Yes.
I would be in agreement with you, Sean. I think there could be a combination here between a loan and a grant that we could potentially figure out. I think we can figure out just a loan too, and I think also as we work our way through this, it doesn't say we can't do this, 2 loans out of this. Is, granting what we're comfortable with to start. Go ahead, Mark.
Would the board feel comfortable giving the loan committee the authority to do a deal up to $300,000? Like, the loan committee will negotiate the final terms. Like, I'm just trying to get us to a point where we don't have to come back here.
Understood.
To keep this process moving.
Got it.
And if the loan committee decides that they want to do half grant, half loan, and up to whatever dollar amount, if they think 300,000 is too much, and they want to do 150, that's fine. But I'd like to see us get to some point where the board can say, we want to be involved in this deal. We'll defer to the loan committee to work out the details and move forward that way. Because I don't think we're going to get to a specific, like, obviously we want to meet with the developers, we want so we're not going to get to an answer today.
Got it.
I just have to say that, I have a lot of concerns, about this. And, the fact that this guy has owned this property since 1991 and nothing's been done for 26 years to it. The fact that everything's still in litigation, and who knows what can happen with the courts. Yeah, we say it's very unlikely and, he won't prevail on appeal, but, that's, to me anyway, there's still a lot of uncertainty there. And, you have 250,000 in liens. They've already put 137,000 into it. I understand we have to help with economic development, and we're not looking at it from a banking perspective per se on how we're going to get repaid. And we're supposed to help with put more of our economic development hat on, but I mean there's just so much risk here for me to be comfortable with granting 300,000, and there's the total project's $2.5 million. I mean, has the developer been able to secure financing? Like, I always want to see, well, how are we going to get to completion of the project? Have they gotten approval, or where's the other money going to come from?
Mark, arguably, it's too early in even the stage for a developer to go and obtain financing on something that they don't ultimately control.
Right.
So it's way too early on that. What they're trying to do is, what the City of Bethlehem through Betco is trying to do is secure the building and get started some of the attributes to getting going with this project. Our repayment comes down to primarily 2 things: is the successful court appeal on the side of the city, number 1, which would then allow what has already been granted and ordered to sell to the borrower or to sell to the developer. So that sense. You know, we could spend hours talking about likelihoods of people prevailing in court, you know, and I do agree with the city in this sense that it is a remote possibility. You know, during my time of public service or being involved in transactions, whereas municipal transactions, there have been all kinds of lawsuits filed, and have spent a lot of times getting opinions on particular lawsuits that were very extraordinarily remote. That's a risk. It's always going to be a risk. You know, I think what the city's presenting to the General Purpose Authority is, you know, the facts as they know it today, and it's up for us to do our diligence on the money that we're asked to be forward with, to ensure that it becomes a loan and not a grant, you know, in that sense. And when you're dealing in municipal financing or not-for-profit financing, it's hard at times to determine between what's a grant and a loan. Because you've done loans before that, you know, really it's a grant because they don't have too much shot of coming back. So these are the things that have to be debated. And this was presented to us with not enough time for the loan committee to really debate, discuss, and work through today. Time is of the essence, obviously, given the condition of the property. And trying to put this whole thing through. And I think what, you know, the staff is requesting us to consider is, do we want to give some authority within the committee to, you know, finish its diligence and proceed accordingly. You know, and if I know Sean and myself as I do, you know, we have very detailed and long conversations, whether it's a $30,000 loan or a $300,000 loan, because we take these dollars very seriously. You know, because the intention is to maintain the assets of the General Purpose Authority, and what we're going to grant, obviously we're not worried about repayment, and I think that's where the balancing act. Our challenge today is that, you know, we haven't been able to organize such a meeting that we could really delve in and answer why is not equity going into the developer, you know, and how should we be balancing that out.
The one other thing that I will say about this legal process and this appeal process, this is simply the property owner exercising his right to make the appeal. When the appeal goes forward, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Dredd, like, he recites the Constitution of the United States. But I mean, they're not valid arguments, and he's lost every single time. You're dealing with somebody who.
But somehow he's been able to continue on since 1991.
What I would say is prior to,
and that's why you know, I'm just. Everybody says, well, this is a slam dunk deal, and I'm saying, well, this guy's played the system.
Prior to
conference call was, if he goes to federal court, how long is that? Like,
yeah.
And how much longer is he going to string this out?
Prior to this administration's dealing with it, like, this administration in the city has made blight a priority to deal with. Before that, the city wasn't aggressively pursuing this property. And, you know, knowing I've worked in Allentown, I've worked other places, and when you're dealing with blight, unless you are willing to commit the time and resources, and it's a significant amount of time to have Mr. Hines write a citation every 10 days to follow up, like, it's just process after process. You know, before they weren't willing to do that. It's really been within the last 5 years that the city has done that, and that's kind of how we even got, or they even got this property to that point. So, you know, those processes are complicated and kind of a machine of their own.
Right. I mean, the only thing I've ever lost with Mr. Konofsky is when I prosecuted on behalf of the city some summary appeals, at which Judge Zito sentenced him to actually a 5-day jail sentence, and then I went back a few days later and asked that he post bail during his appeal, and that was denied. But that is literally the only thing I've lost with Mr. Konofsky. All this has happened since the Donch's administration took office in 2014. So we're not looking at quite as elongated a timetable as you might think. And literally, this process is just Mr. Konofsky exhausting his appeals. He appeals everything. He appeals everything on the last date. He will often, when he loses on appeal, he'll file petitions for reconsideration, which he will file on the last date. And that's all this is. And I say, Mark, I think I mentioned that in our committee meeting last week. But it's kind of facetious. But I think, he, for all the good it does him, he could literally attach like the Declaration of Independence to his briefs, or that could be his brief, because what he offers is evidence that's, for example, never introduced before the trial court. And he offers all these allegations, and it's just nonsense. He likes to impugn the integrity of the courts, of Mr. Hines, of myself. I don't take it personally or seriously, but that's a lot of what this is on appeal. He doesn't actually look at. He doesn't make allegations such as the trial court erred in finding that I didn't own the property for 12 months or something like that. And frankly, I think at least some of the judges have just basically said he's waived all his issues on appeal because he didn't raise any of this before me as the trial court. So obviously, we're very confident that we will prevail on appeal. For us, it's just kind of running out the clock.
So if he loses his appeal, does he lose his interest in the property?
Right. The most recent court order is an order from late June, I believe, authorizing the sale of the property to Collaboration 3, which is only held up because that is really the final order for. We have kind of interlocutory orders previously, which he's appealed from, but the order approving the sale really is kind of the final order because it would extinguish his property right or his interest in the property. So that's kind of what we're dealing with here. And if that order from Judge Beltrami is upheld in the appeals process, that would extinguish his property right. And then it's just a matter of divvying up the $130,000 purchase price to the various lien holders, of which Mr. Konofsky would be one since he's an owner, but he's so far down the the price of the proceeds of the sale will be exhausted way before we would get to him.
Right, but he had an offer of $500,000 a year ago. So if I'm him and I'm looking at hey, I'm going to lose on appeal, and his attorneys are saying, hey, look, you're ultimately going to lose on appeal. You got a $500,000 offer where you're going to walk away. I think they said he's going to walk away with some money, and he doesn't take it.
I don't know how much money he'll. Well, in any event, first of all, he doesn't have an attorney. I know it's difficult to deal with this in a vacuum if you haven't dealt with Mr. Konofsky. Mr. Hines and I have dealt with Mr. Konofsky more than anyone else in the world, probably. It's just I don't want to impugn the man standing here, but you have to deal with this person to understand that what you're suggesting is
Matt,
not going to happen.
Let's just get back to really the question in hand. The answer to the question is, can he choose to get this under agreement of sale at this point today and sell it for $400,000?
Well, the answer is yes.
Okay.
I don't know how attractive that would be to a buyer because the buyer would take title subject to the conservatorship. And under the conservatorship, Collaboration 3 is still the end user. Obviously, we have a court order handing off title to them at the end of this process. So I don't know what buying the property at this point gets the buyer.
Well, the buyer has to deal with that first of all.
Right.
And then the buyer also has to deal with, and so shall the seller, all the existing liens on the property.
Correct. A theoretical buyer takes title, has to pay off the liens, but again, he's going to lose that title because we have a court order requiring the property be sold to Collaboration 3 for $130,000. So I think it would be crazy for someone to buy the property under the conservatorship.
May I, in the interest of making sure that everybody in this room gets home for dinner tonight, may I offer I haven't said anything, but kind of give you a summary of what I've heard in bullet form. Number one, there are urgent circumstances to making some level of repairs. Number two, Sean wearing his hat as a developer, multiple hats, has indicated that perhaps the building can be stabilized for less, and maybe significantly less than $600,000. Sean, Neil, and Mark in particular have expressed concerns, this is point number 3, about risk sharing here, in the fact that the risk seems to be borne by 2 stakeholders when there are actually 3 stakeholders, the third stakeholder being the developer, who, at least based on everything we've seen, appears to be the one that has the most upside gain, with right now the least amount of risk going into this. Mark, point number 4, Mark has asked whether or not, in the interest of trying to keep this moving forward, can the loan committee be authorized by this board to dig into the details and maybe with some parameters as to its authority to try and pull the pieces together. Number 5, this is my own personal opinion, because this is a 3-party dance and because you have urgent circumstances, this strikes me that a meeting involving the 3 stakeholders or representatives of the 3 stakeholders sooner rather than later needs to be done. I think this bears repeating, although I believe it's evident. The board members are doing precisely what they should be doing in their roles as board members and in their roles as having a, let's say, fiduciary responsibility with respect to the funds of the GPA. There's been I've heard nothing in terms of we don't want to do this or we think the project is not a worthy project. What I've heard is that before we do this, we want to make sure that we are being prudent stewards, if you will, of $300,000. And just as a solicitor, I commend you for doing that. I mean, that's part of your role here. So that's what I see as kind of the summary of where you're at. And I do think ultimately the lawyers can paper this, and I'll be prepared to do whatever in a hurry, night, whatever. But it really comes down to a kind of a business judgment, a business risk analysis by the board in conjunction with the city and really involving the third stakeholder, and then making the best decision you can in view of all the circumstances. I agree with Mark, both Marks, but I've been practicing law too long to know that crap happens. You know, right when you think you've got a slam dunk, sometimes you don't. And what does concern me is what somebody said. Mr. Konofsky, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, has done a masterful job of stretching this out for more than 20 years. Without the aid of paying somebody $200, $300, $500 an hour. Maybe you give them a gig on Dr. Phil for some money. I don't know, but that's the overview that I wanted to offer everybody here. And then one of my favorite questions is, as a result of that overview, or in view of that overview, who does what, when, next, where?
I mean, we will certainly coordinate whatever meetings need to occur, but I think, in order for those meetings to be fruitful, like, we need some kind of parameters on what the board is authorizing the loan committee to go out and negotiate.
Yeah, the board hasn't authorized the loan committee to do anything.
Right.
Because really, and I agree with Mark in a lot of respects from the standpoint that, he hasn't even said he's on board with this yet.
Sure. Right.
Peg's view, and it's all of us. And this is a little different because, we've helped, say, the Easton Redevelopment Authority on a kind of similar situation on the Northampton Street property, they took the property, so the redevelopment authority owned it. Then they came in, and this is a building, same thing. It was a shell. There was no roof. The roof collapsed. The roof was laying on the first floor. They came in for like $100,000, $100,000+ grant, but that was as a match to get them another, couple $100,000 of remediation costs. Then it went to a private developer. In this instance, which I'm going to do more research on this myself because I don't understand the conservatorship process from the standpoint. You have a court order to sell it to some third-party developer, and you haven't bought the building yet, haven't taken ownership of the building. That's the one I have a hard time getting my head around, because it's like, what lawsuit is he going to come up with again, even on that aspect of it? Again, maybe that's perfectly legal to do, but do we as the, and I brought this up on the phone, do we as the, GPA want to be attached to some future lawsuit possibly as well? That's the thing that scares me kind of most out of this. I mean, I definitely would like to help in some way and figure out what that is. I think would definitely need the support of the whole board, or a quorum of our members, and then figure out how collaboration 3, because in my mind, like I said, if they all came up with $50,000 each, that's only 2% of the overall project cost. I mean, that to me would play. And if they absolutely said, nope, we're not going to do it, we don't want to put a penny of our own money in the project that we're going to ultimately buy for $100,000 and some $1,000, then the city of Bethlehem or Bedco has the ability to basically say, well, we need $12,200 on top of our $300 that we already have to make this building structurally sound and weather tight, and we can wait out our own process. Then come to our board and say, hey, we own the building, we satisfied all the legal requirements, now we want a grant to help this third-party developer. That could be the end game too. You guys could, under your own volition, pretty much take care of the roofing problem and submit a, grant loan application for when you do own it. Again, I'm getting pulled in 10 different directions on this in my own.
So just to try to, would the board entertain a proposal that, to allow for up to for the loan committee to continue to work on this and delegate this authority to the loan committee, provided that they don't commit more than $300,000 worth of resources, with the anticipation that it would be loaned, and not more than, say, $100,000 of that $300,000 that could be granted?
Yeah.
Or,
I think what you're asking is just, would the board allow the loan committee to negotiate it? I wouldn't.
Okay.
But I'd like to know exactly what it's going to cost to make this building secure. It doesn't sound like we need $600,000
Sure.
to make it completely secure, to get us through the winter in a cost-effective way, that we're not going to have to redo stuff
Right.
that we've already done.
Right.
I think a lot of the plan would be to vet that out through the conversations. Again, this has been just presented to us a couple of days ago is the challenge, Peg, with that.
And
the situation.
and maybe
so.
that whole number could be less, and Bedco could have more skin in the game, and maybe the developer could have a little bit. And even if he doesn't, I think if Bedco owned this property, it would be a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
There's, what I'm hearing, these are my 6th, 7th, maybe beyond points. There needs to be at least a little more homework done, needs to be done quickly. My suggestion, I know where Mark's going with the loan committee, and I'm seeing reservations about doing that. If the loan committee can jump in right away, what I'd recommend is that you dig in. If there's something that the loan committee says can work, we have a follow-up conference call, board meeting, advertise it in 24 hours, and the board approves it.
Yeah, because I'd like everybody's input. I don't want to be doing this in a vacuum.
And we normally don't do board meetings by phone, but we can do it. If we can get 4 people on the phone to do it, that way the whole board's seen it. Everybody will then have the homework. If need be, if you want me involved in the meetings, I mean, lawyers usually are blockers rather than people who help things happen. but in this case, I really understand what you're trying to do, and if there's a way that I can help the process, write a narrative, circulate it through Sarah to people prior to a conference call board meeting, people will have a chance to digest it for a couple of days, understand it. The fact that the loan committee will have been involved with it, I think will elevate people's comfort level, and then you can go forward. I think, Sean, what you're saying with the grant has some real appeal, because if this thing drags out, a grant's a grant, it's no strings attached.
Right.
We give the money, okay?
Right.
What they do with it is
And that's what, and we've done grants, and you say,
Right.
okay, we did it, but we did it, we made an analysis, we knew there was some risk involved, we weighed that risk against the potential benefit, the board approved it, we move on. Or if you want to tack on a loan piece later, those are things, to me, if we're at that point, that's the easy part. I think what the board in a nutshell is dealing with right now is it comfortable enough, or will it get comfortable enough with this project and what the respective risks are to make a commitment of some kind or another? That's where I see you're at right now. And anything I can do to help the process, I'll be glad to do it.
So we can do a advertise for a day, have a board meeting, and most of the conference, be it a conference call.
Conference call by means where everybody can hear, just like we're including Helene right now. And basically, in that conference call, the people who were involved in doing the homework, the loan committee, whomever, can report to the full board, give their analysis, give their recommendation, and I expect them probably, that may take 20 minutes. I expect in less than 5 minutes we'll have a vote. The recommendation most likely would be approved, and everybody would leave here, I think, with, to use one of my favorite terms, a much clearer conscience than you have right now.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I'm available to work to get something done here. I see the building I see the building getting tight. It's a matter of, is it the bells and whistles, and are they coming to the table to help with their own project? I think
Amy,
that's the way I look at it in my own mind.
Sadly, unlike some boards I worked with, you have people that really know what they're talking about here, and a very sophisticated developer in Sean. So that's how that really, and I say that as a compliment. That really has helped.
I think isn't that an oxymoron, sophisticated developer?
like honest lawyer or whatever, right? Yeah. So, but seriously, I will do whatever with Mark, with Sean. Mark, just sit there to, listen. I'll be ready to document whatever you need documented. This is not going to be a case where the documents are going to slow down the process.
Yeah, they're all local firms. This shouldn't be hard to get together and nail this down. And we can, Neil's the tough one. He's got the toughest schedule.
From our end of it, I just want to say the city thanks you for your consideration.
No,
we really
appreciate
appreciate
the
the information.
It looks like a fantastic project.
Yeah.
It's a matter of,
as you can see, it's not an easy nut to crack, this one. But
No, it's
I don't know what
I don't envy you dealing with
Phenomenal
Mr.
work to date. Really, it's not
I don't know
easy.
what the
It's all
equivalent
good
of
work.
a civilian Purple Heart is, but all of you should get it.
All right, then that's how we will move forward, and we'll be
Yeah.
in touch with the loan committee.
And Mark, whatever you need from me to try to help the process, I'll be glad to do it.
Okey doke.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, thank you for the
Thanks.
presentation.
Thanks.
Yep. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, Neil's got a jam here. Let's see.
There's-
New business. Tentative meeting calendar?
The tentative meeting calendar was distributed in the packets. I didn't see it in this packet.
In the email?
Oh, the last page. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm unable to make July 10th.
Well, we highlighted a couple.
What, July 10th?
Yes.
Here we go.
I'm always on vacation then.
There we go. Yeah, I'm usually out on August.
Getting my hair
So
cut on
Tuesday,
October
April
12th.
3rd is the Tuesday after Easter Sunday. We just wanted to make sure, and so we could do March 27th or April 10th, or continue to hold it on April 3rd.
You want to bump it a week?
It's up to you guys.
April 10th would be fine.
April
Let's
10th?
just make it April
Yeah.
10th.
Okay. And And then the July 10th was bumped because of the July 4th holiday. Same with Tuesday, September 11th. That was the day after Labor Day. Election Day, November 6th. I couldn't remember if that was a big deal for you guys or not.
We're meeting next month on Election Day.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll keep that the same. All right, we'll get this finalized for next month for you guys to take official action on.
P3 bridge and prison updates.
I can give the 30 seconds.
Cut it to 20 and we'll let you fly. Go ahead.
P3 Bridge work continues. Benish, our third-party engineer, is really, I think, doing a great job. I'm in periodic communication when they have a question, what should this certification say or something, but Benish, working with Stan and you,
Yeah.
okay, there are no major glitches of which I am aware.
I made the mistake of getting notifications every time they upload to the
Oh,
FTP
yeah,
site.
yeah.
I have like 23
Yeah,
emails. I got to
but
go look and see what those documents are from like Thursday and Friday.
I talked to
It's
Stan.
mostly all engineering stuff, but every time I get one, I'm like, I go on.
I talked to Stan late yesterday afternoon. No major glitches. Nothing new on the prison other than someday the county's going to need a new prison somehow, some way, somewhere.
Just back to the P3 project, dragging it out to be 45 seconds and not 30. Are we on budget? You know, should we be worried, concerned about that as the authority? Since we're in the
Yes, we're
pass
on
road?
budget. One of the reasons why I'm staying in the loop, we don't have any change orders yet. And
Okay.
our mantra is no change orders unless all hell is about to break loose.
And the other costs that are coming through the financial side of things is other professional services. The 140, is that, what is that? Is that our engineer primarily?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are their contract. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Is, they invoice per their contract, and that's at
Benish is doing,
break points.
they're
Yes,
doing
and I
a
review that.
phenomenal job,
And
in my view.
I just saw something with a big check going to Krieger in September.
Yeah, that's a milestone payment.
So it'll be the first time in September that will then show up, hit our financials, is that correct?
And that milestone, payment, like everyone, is being vetted by Benish, by Sean, by Public Works. It's had every sign off short of the Pope.
Yeah. And
Okay,
those
thank
were
you.
all predetermined. Those were the per the
Okay.
contract. So there won't be another for a while.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the one that just came.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm sorry I cost another 20 seconds.
No, that's okay. I'm glad you're bird dogging it the way you are.
Shell building up.
Rumblings already about this prison, and I know there's going to be quite, petitions are already circulating.
That they
Okay.
won it?
That's
That's
not-
nice, that they won it coming in, or, oh, no, you're saying against it. I'm kidding.
The county has a prison that
Sorry.
the county ultimately has a prison that needs to be replaced. It has to find a location for it somewhere.
Okay.
We don't want a situation that happened in Lehigh County where the federal government stepped in and there was a court order and they had a gun to their heads.
Lehigh Valley Industrial Park Shell building update. The docs all
I'm-
put to bed on that?
Well, so Petrucci Shell Building, the loan documents are with Petrucci to review. What we're anticipating now with their schedule, they're probably not going to start construction on that until March of next year because they don't want to get it into the ground and then get delayed by the winter. That's what they're.
Does that do anything with our loan approval at all? In timeframes, how long the loan is written and when the loan closes and things like that?
As far as the loan, we haven't signed loan documents yet,
Okay,
so
got it. So
that
no
will
impact.
be
Oh,
a firm's.
We wouldn't fund then until next March.
Right, and a firm's schedule will be identified as part of that. With the LVIP Shell Building, I know they went out to bid for design builders, and I'm hoping by next month we'll have a proposal and like an official ask of the GPA and how they want us to participate in that project.
That's coming from who?
LVIP.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Hospital and Higher Ed Authority updates, there are none, correct? Because we,
My hope was to have documents. Good thing we didn't have the meeting today. Nothing is ever as easy as it appears.
yeah.
Okay? It turned out as we dug into things, there were more things that had to be addressed.
Okay.
But we are close to being done.
Staff report, anything for the good of the order? Anything else?
There are a couple of statement of financial interest forms that have not been filled out. We will come meet with you.
Is mine in?
Yours is in.
Okay, then bring the paddle,
Is mine
bring our
in?
special
Is
paddle to the
mine
next
in?
meeting.
You're in. You're in.
I'm not.
Okay.
Paddle.
Helene, that's it. You're first. up.
Helene, we will come meet with you if you want to help you fill it out.
That's important because it's a state law.
Yeah,
This isn't,
we're
a
not in
GPA
compliance.
policy.
This is not.
This is a
I
state law.
promise. I promise.
Okay. Very
The other
good.
offender is Mr. Donahue.
Okay. Next meeting, Tuesday, November 7th, 2017. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
So move.
Second.
Helene, seconded by, we'll go with Peg on that one. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all. Thank you, Helene.
Thank you.
Get that in. I'm going to get a smaller paddle, okay? We don't want to.
Okay, great.
The big one is John Lucia's size. We don't want to use that on you. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks. Bye.
I've